So now it's a game of waiting. Not so much for The Flash at this point, because whatever does happen is going to yield the same general results that are already in the pipeline. The wait, even with a new property like Blue Beetle and one last holdover sequel in Aquaman 2, is for the new initiative to start up under what James Gunn and Peter Safran are doing, and hope for the best, I guess. I already covered that business in another episode. Looking back over all of this, with this recording, the most recent thing that's happened is Warner Discovery changing the name of HBO Max to just Max and announcing a streaming reboot of Harry Potter with J.K. Rowling involved, so everyone will be mad about that instead. What strikes me trying to sum it all up is how tiring and pointless it's all seemed. You know, I thought going back and looking over it, some idea would emerge other than, well, this was a big waste of mine and everyone else's time, but no, that pretty much nails it. What was clear from the outset was that nobody at Warner Brothers, back when there actually was a Warner Brothers at the start of the DCEU project, wanted to make movies out of DC Comics characters other than maybe Batman. And they knew they had to keep that brand alive because it was kind of always had been since 1989, and they felt like they at least had to try with Superman because it's Superman, but there wasn't some big push to do a whole line of these things. They only felt like they had to because Marvel was doing it. Otherwise, they didn't feel a big push, and you know, that was actually probably fine in hindsight. That was the better way to look at it. Not everything needs to be a movie, especially if no one is champing at the bit to make it. And Warner executives were clearly invested in other material, whether the audience was there for this or not. Those are the breaks sometimes. And it's not like there weren't DC adaptations happening. They were all over TV and animation. There were tons of cartoons, tons of animated movies. There was that whole thing on the CW. It's possible we just didn't need two whole superhero universes running in movies at the same time just because comics had always worked that way because reasons. But the studio felt obligated to because the fans and the market made a lot of noise about it, and the DC Extended Universe never stopped feeling like something that the people paying for it were only doing because they thought the numbers were saying they had to, even after the numbers stopped telling them that and instead started saying, actually, nobody wants this. But what came of it in the end? Most of the films were garbage or forgettable. Multiple careers and a whole studio apparatus have been destroyed. The whole brand, a franchise, whatever you want to call it, now has a stain on it that's going to linger for a long time, and the effect on the rest of film and publishing industries are profound. This was an unmitigated disaster. And for what? There isn't even a new lesson to learn here that everyone involved shouldn't have already known from a dozen other failures in film or business history. Going back over years of these episodes and observations, all I can see is myself struggling and failing to find new ways to describe what's happening when it's all so clear, but the news churn demanded everyone pretend like something new was happening. And it wasn't. I wanted to come away from this looking back feeling purged, cleansed, cleaned out something. Instead, I feel emptied. I hope that I put out something entertaining in my work amid all this, but the DCEU era itself, almost none of this will have mattered. It's like when I tell people in their 20s that, yeah, no, really, there were 7 Police Academy movies, and they just asked me to explain why. More than anything, I wanted to leave off on some hopeful note about how the world needs heroes. These characters are timeless and important. You know, the Superman is the modern extension of Arthur and Moses, Joseph Campbell's monomyth, and fade in and out on images of constellations and cave paintings, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sorry, I'm so fucking tired of regurgitating versions of that platitude, and I agree with it. Fucking hell, I'm rooting for James Gunn's whole thing to succeed because I like him and a lot of the people involved, but I just can't come in at the end of another one of these things and act like it's so important that we always have new Superman movies and new Batman movies and whatever, because no, it's not. Only if someone thinks there's a story worth telling about Superman or Batman is there a reason to have them. Otherwise, it's just brand management and marketing sales. Keeping an IP in rotation because it needs to be, and that's how we got into this mess in the first place. The DC and/or Marvel pantheons aren't going anywhere, and neither are any of the others. This is our world now, nerds, like it or not, and for real, the whole dredging up Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung and the monomyth to elevate these things and demonstrate that they descend from the classical tradition and the human experience. Is there anyone left who's still fucking impressed by that? Because I realize I'm 42, so hearing my comparative lit professors whip out, hey kids, did you notice Baby Moses in the basket, Baby Superman in the rocket, Momotaro in the peach, was still a new thing when I was coming up, but isn't that just the regular curriculum now? So what? So buttons. If anything now, that's a better argument to have new things than to continue venerating the old things. So I don't have a summation, really. I don't have any big profundities. I don't have a mythic statement to go out on, because the point of this is that there was no point. The DCEU was trash. It meant nothing. And so there's nothing to be left about it, said about it, or learned from it. It was a long don't list. I wish James Gunn all the best of luck, because if we're doing more of these, I hope they're good, and I hope they mean something. Guardians 3 is fucking great, so it's in good hands. But if we're doing more of these, they'd better mean something, because this meant nothing. And if the studios and filmmakers have decided that there need to be more of these, okay. And I'll watch them, and I'm sure most of you will too. And I hope they're good. But we did so much fighting about this, and so much arguing and discussing, analyzing, and it didn't amount to anything. It's good for these things to be your entertainment. Maybe it's even okay for them to be your mythology. But they shouldn't be your life. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.